Self-aware, shows you care. We're in the air. Do you dare? It was the fall of 2003. I just graduated from Texas A&M, yes, in College Station, and also completed 4 months of training with the Corps of Cadets USMC platoon to get into much better shape before meeting the gunny a few months later. I'd enjoyed some beers during those years. Then it was off to Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida to become a 90-day wonder. The ash and the trash, as the Academy grads refer to us, I hear. Head recently shaven, personal belongings taken. We all look the same, even the girls, as I recall. The transformation was fast and went deep, too. Reconditioning well underway for the good of the nation. Self and identity is top of mind. Multiple wingmen have appeared out of the blue with this week's theme and reinforced the importance of reclaiming one's identity during military transition. I'm grateful they did, and I'm tagging a few LinkedIn posts and pulling from their quotes to address what I consider the most serious of matters in this military transition discussion. I encourage you to visit those posts, linked toward the end of today's article, and ponder on their wisdom after reading or listening to this 8th edition in the Knowledge Bombs for Military Transition series, a 16-minute listen at 1x playback or 12 minutes at 1.5. This is the most important edition to date. Don't deny yourself this intel for your liberty battle or that of your people. Concerning this week's photo, scroll back up and take a closer look at those 4 planes before continuing on. A Flying Fortress, the B-17. A Liberator, the B-24, the Liberty Lion favorite. A Mitchell B-25, and a Mustang, a P-51. Consider each of these aircraft. They're all of the same, quote, type, close quote, and mission. Fixed-wing fighters, as compared to other type mission aircraft, such as a balloon, glider, helicopter, rotary wing, and unmanned UAV, examples given. We're sticking with the fixed-wing type analogy today. Consider this type designation as our affiliation with the U.S. military. It's our type as it relates to our uniformed service and the mind state basic training put us all in. And inside a box, too. We'll be labeled veterans someday also. It is our type on the assembly line. Self-aware on the assembly line. We're in uniformed appearance and in uniformed organization, and necessarily so. And we're uniformly uninformed about it, too. Recall a previous edition where an assembly line of aircraft drove home a point. Imagine your identity is on the assembly line today in the place of one of those aircraft. We're all cut from the same general cloth, wearing the nation's robe, having been indoctrinated in one way or another to the rank and file structure necessary for disciplined action and duty in military organization. The change we underwent was for the greater good. We didn't change intentionally. The change was purposeful. Big difference. Often referred to as, quote, volunteered to serve, close quote. Then we took a verbal oath for all the world to hear. We all swore an oath, both enlisted and officers. For listeners, the links are in the post, and probably took it multiple times over the years. Each version was slightly different, but both were to the same thing, the Constitution, and by affiliation, the Declaration of Independence, and the ideals laid out in them. Listeners, there's links to both of those documents as well. I consider your Constitution as a glove protecting the hand that is your Declaration of Independence, and they are yours as an American citizen and a member of We the People. Have no doubt about that. Have you read either lately? If not, get a Cato Pocket Constitution for both. Link under the picture. A production line analogy for self-awareness. All 4 aircraft had their own production lines too, just like the weapon systems of today. Production lines crank out every single type identically. They're all fixed wing and they all look the same. They all operate pretty much the same too. No physics lesson here. Ask the aviators in the comments dropping bombs on my technical deficiencies to explain the nitty-gritty to you. But then the types diverge into their own models and series. There exists a fork in the production line of fixed-wing aircraft. And then, as time marches on, change occurs as the aircraft service life lengthens and type evolves. In effect, more experience from operating the weapon is gained and improvements are made. This is how incremental improvements improve the efficiency, resiliency, dependency, and even length of service life for the weapon type. The same ideas apply to your or your spouse's journey through the rank and file of the military experience. You become more entrenched in your small sliver of the military machine with each passing year or decade. Then, the type of planes model, the 4 planes flying in the header picture today, the B-17, B-24, B-25, and P-51, and series, there's only one series for each type model is shown in today's photo, and I've got no idea what they are. but they begin to evolve from previous models and series within each type. Now, I know the aviators reading this are saying, darn logistician has no idea what he's talking about. Just stick to beans, bullets, and black oil, and let us do the flying. Side note for the critics. To you, I say, write a better article for me. We can link it back to this one to appease your frustration. I'm writing for the general population, not the subject matter Top Gun expert engineer or Blue Angel and Black Knight aviator. You are cool, though. Thumbs up. And for the listeners, there's a picture of Maverick and Top Gun to check out. There's also a link to a video, so I encourage you to click there. If anyone desires to get into the nitty-gritty on Type Model Series, or TMS, for an atypical military aircraft, such as a balloon or UAV, and then the Mission Design Series, the MDS designation for typical military aerospace vehicles like those we're covering today, fly right to this article link, which tells you all about it. And bear with me as I tie the analogy back to your identity as a military service member and what you'll have to do with it to embrace liberty and get freedom back. Back onto the self-identity track. Then the identity you used to have gets buried underneath that heavier rank, the cool unit patches, all the medals and ribbons from exploits in foreign lands, and Love Me Wall memorabilia. Recalling my experience from Officer Candidate School, I got my tail kicked there. The USMC drill instructor was brutal, and it was good for my military service. It was terrible for me as a human, though. Your indoctrination experience was terrible for you too, warrior. Hanging on to it is the most serious of domestic threats, and it's right under your nose. The first wingman's view, and there's a link to click to this LinkedIn article for you listeners. Referencing War's a Racket by Smedley Butler, little to nothing has changed for transition to civilian life in 8 decades. The solutions in place offered for free from the government aren't changing fast either. Quote, there they were remolded. They were made over. They were made to about face to regard murder as the order of the day. They were put shoulder to shoulder and, through mass psychology, they were entirely changed. We used them for a couple of years and trained them to think nothing at all of killing or of being killed. Then, suddenly, we discharged them and told them to make another about face. This time they had to do their own readjustment, sans without mass psychology. Many, too many, of these fine young people are eventually destroyed mentally because they could not make the final about face alone. Smedley Butler, War is a Racket. This idea of self and the status you perceive along with it is way more than simply the rank on the collar and the weapons platform of choice. The Liberty Accelerator status of self, identity, pillar elements resonate best with me. Those 5 are information, authority, influence, autonomy, and relationships. And note, for information, it's information about you as an individual. Junior officers' questions. They were all about purpose. A junior officer in a training pipeline provided me a long list of questions about this topic a few years ago. Many of them are covered under the status of self discussion. There are 9 questions here I'm going to read off to you. 1, how much does shore tour location affect my future plans both in and out of the military? 2, financial freedom with regards to separation, where to start looking, planning. 3, family affairs, how to ensure your spouse's success within their career as you relocate every few years. 4, need for higher education for career progression. What's required versus expected to continue forward? 5, decision to buy versus rent. Is there a general rule of thumb on how long to remain at a duty station before considering a home purchase? 6, importance of maintaining contacts as you move forward, in or out of service. 7, differences in pay based on where you are stationed, excluding BAH. 8, family benefits. What lesser known benefits are provided to service members and their families that should be taken advantage of? And lastly, higher education while on active duty and using the GI Bill, Montgomery, or 9/11 versus scholarship opportunities for service members. Status of self and the identity landscape. It took me way too long to realize that the status of our individual self is an asset to utilize, not one to hold us back. The questions posed by this young officer all point to the 5 elements of my status of self and identity pillar. The first question, how much does shore tour location affect my future plans, both in and out of the military? That's an information about himself and autonomy question. The second, financial freedom with regards to separation, where to start looking at planning, that's an autonomy question. Family affairs, how to ensure your spouse's success within their career as you relocate every few years, that's an authority and an autonomy question. Need for higher education for career progression, what's required versus expected to continue forward, that's an influence and relationships question. The decision to buy versus rent, is there a general rule of thumb on how long to remain at a duty station before considering a home purchase? That's an autonomy question. The importance of maintaining context as you move forward in or out of service. That's a relationships, influence, and authority question. The seventh here, differences in pay based on where you're stationed, excluding B8s. That's an information and autonomy question. The family benefits. What lesser known benefits are provided to service members and their families that should be taken advantage of? That's an information question. And lastly, higher education while active duty and using the GI Bill versus scholarship opportunities for service members. That's an information and influence question. These are all inquisitive questions that young military personnel, let's not kid ourselves, old folks too, and it applies to mil spouses also, at all ranks, should, in fact, must understand to allow for intentional and strategic planning. The tactical missions you'll face continue encroaching on the Armed Forces Family Liberty Battle preparations and mission planning for that inevitable transition mission that we're all on right now. The fog of work on the crushing strategic staff and the burdensome tactical and operational assignments keep both eyes focused on the mission at the expense of neglecting preparations for the biggest, Big M mission. Don't get ambushed. Deployment readiness is transition readiness, and answers to each of those young woman's questions must be tracked back to your why. In initial training, no matter the source of commissioning, our why, if we ever had one, very likely we didn't though, was most likely taken from you. It was taken from me too at the ripe young age of 23. Replaced with a rank, title, and mission to support the team and defend the nation, the model and series become more ingrained the longer you're in the prison of rank and file structure and the fog of work and DOD. While taking care of my people, that's a missing piece of you that must be found again well before that transition mission. Herb Thompson's Shockwave Through the Transition Space in 2020 was the name of his book, Transition Mission. Turns into a full-on battle for liberty. A retired master sergeant from the U.S. Air Force said on a call one day, quote, "Decades in government service does damage," close quote. I couldn't have said it better myself. And the individual must fix themselves. Nobody will do it for you. The battle will very likely begin via unanticipated ambush through forced drawdowns, admin separation, medical discharge, pick your poison for unplanned separation or retirement, or your calculated sequenced approach alone in a silo. In effect, plan with partial information on a siloed mission planning environment inside a box, which we don't do with any other mission, by the way. Finding your why is a very doable process, but it takes intentionality and your willingness to go and get it. A team and expert guides knowledgeable on this aspect of psychology can be useful too. I use two to break out from my own fog of service. I'm happy to point you in one direction, so schedule a recon call and engage. Link provided in the paragraph there, listener. I can't answer this young officer's question without asking the officer what it is he and his family want from life. What's her why? Why do you get up every morning? Why do you desire to live? For what? What did you join the service and pick the career field you did for? And on it can go. These are deep and personal questions that only the individual can answer, and the answers can change too. I'd be foolhardy to provide anyone guidance without asking about your why and getting to know you on a very personal level. Back to the airplane type model series analogy. So the one type of airplane across the four different models in today's picture provide a great analogy to our individual identity. Each of those type model series and the individual aircraft number assigned to each, as well as that aviator's call sign written on the fuselage looking so cool, are unique to that aviator and that numbered aero vehicle in the squadron. The paint colors and design on each aircraft, unique to it and it alone, is you. Not the call sign you're given, not the pictures themselves, but the intricate paint colors, strokes of the brush on the metal, and the uniqueness of the placement of those drawings on each aircraft are you at your very core. These traits are the essence of the craft. Have you found your essence? Answer, what's your purpose, or what's your why, without referencing your military affiliation, and you found it. Bombs inbound. Anything less than that, and you have it. Your identity, you too, no spouse, is very likely buried somewhere deep down underneath the rank, weapons platform, and service branch that indoctrinated you, and through you, your family is applicable years or decades ago. The cultural and psychological makeover continued through subsequent training, follow-on assignments, academic experiences, 2 decades of warfighting posture with one deployment or several, and a scarcity mindset in the prison of military service. It does damage, too. And it's broken most all of us because of what the culture does to perpetuate the mindset necessary for successful military operations in the slow motion of bureaucracy. It doesn't care about you or your family, so you must own this yourself. Nobody else will. Say it out loud. It's my fault. That's Jason Stapleton, USMC veteran who's had an instrumental impact on my life and my transition. Salute to you, Jason. Second wingman's view. There's another link here for you listeners. I encourage you to navigate over to a Navy SEAL commander retired article where he refers to a former Army corporal as boss now. This is the perfect post to meet your identity challenge head on. Tying it back to the life column in the series. Recognizing your status beyond a rank, weapons platform, and service branch in the real world beyond uniform service is a crucial first step in achieving your liberty and autonomy once you return to society. And that day is very likely to arrive sooner than you might believe. It's central to your health and a major aspect of your wealth, too, which also touches every aspect of the work column on jobs, efforts and energy, and taxes. Have you seen the federal government's debt burden lately? Surpassed 30 trillion, yes, with a T, and accelerating exponentially, and that's only part of the problem. Corporate and private debt levels are at nosebleed levels, too, and it's not a partisan political argument. Both sides are equally awful. Uncle Sam is drunk and insolvent and a serious domestic threat with the out-of-control deficit spending. Do you believe he'll be able to continue paying you that great salary and funding all of those, quote, benefits, close quote, including those for our non-military affiliated citizenry, such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, examples given? It's the purchasing power that matters, not the nominal paychecks and annuity income streams and allowances that are falling way behind the rising cost pressures. See the previous editions to get up to speed on these most serious matters pertaining to your domestic household economy. These economics and finance touch points are linked to your identity journey because both are paramount to getting your liberty back. The business section for the TLDR crowd, YOLO and Tina. Too long, didn't read? That's TLDR. I'm not summarizing this post. It's too important for a Cliff's Notes version to be written in a few sentences here. Carve out a half hour, read this entire post of 15 minutes long, and visit the external links for another 15 minutes. Just a half hour of your day. To close out this week's edition, some situational awareness on the liberty movement for armed forces families follows. I've pivoted much of my writing and editing efforts to polishing off the book for major release and marketing to begin on Memorial Day. Only a month away, so expect more daily 2-minute videos in the weeks ahead. If you desire to grab a seat in the Catapult Launch Book Club and contribute to the liberty movement through Independence Day and into Labor Day, follow the Book Catapult page. Then on 30 September, before getting my liberty back on 1 October, I'll be saying the Citizen's Oath to Liberty. Then we'll be celebrating a #1 bestseller achievement by Veterans Day. What do you say? We're holding a weekly Liberty Power Hour where you can fly in and drop some bombs about the book or anything else that's on your mind. Participation has sucked. My marketing effort for that has been bad. I'm trying different things to get the word out. The timing could be the issue. Let me know in the comments what days and times you'd carve out to attend. We're going to ensure you utilize all of your time and experiences during military service to perfect the skill sets and position yourself to return to society, not as a military veteran dependent on it. There's no liberty in that, but a full contributor to it, living life fully alive, well beyond service, bathing in liberty, and enjoying total freedom. If you're a military veteran or spouse of one already, we've got solutions for you too. Anyone in the Armed Forces family is invited to partake in liberty and freedom beyond the uniform. There is no alternative. That's Tina. You only live once. That's YOLO. To your liberty, heck yeah.